Hello, hello. In today's episode, we're going to hear all about witchcraft and we're going to hear the cause of death for the victim, Jenny Dazey. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, your host, and I recap live trials. Guys, this trial lasted 2 whole days. 2 days. This morning, they're going to be doing closing arguments. Yeah, so let me recap day 2 so you guys bring you guys up to speed. While you're watching this, I'll be watching for a verdict and I'll bring that to you as soon as it comes through. Except I have to go to the doctor's office with my sister, but you'll get it as soon as possible. In any case, I finally figured out why the defendant has not been shown because he's not there. He has refused to participate in this trial. Now, we've seen this before. Doesn't want to come to trial. So he's not there. So the first witness on the stand day 2 is the medical examiner. She said the cause of death was multiple sharp force injuries. Now, it's the usual testimony. They're supposed to give the cause of death, the manner of death. They go through all their qualifications. They talk about how an autopsy is done. But she didn't explain the difference between cutting and chopping. But she said that on the head of the victim, Jenny Dazey, there were 13 wounds. 13. Several were cutting, several were chopping. Now, it's suspected that there was a knife and a hatchet used in this case. So I guess the jury's going to figure out. Some of those were from the knife, some of those were from the hatchet. Her neck had 2 chopping wounds. So was he trying to cut her head off? And the left hand had 2 chopping wounds where he cut her fingers off. And then she had blunt force trauma to the left arm and her head. In other words, she called it blunt force trauma, bruising to her forearm on the left side and the side of her head. And the manner of death was homicide. Now, she did have to explain to the jury that that's a, forensic term, homicide. It's not the legal term. She hasn't determined that anybody is guilty of homicide. It just means that it's death at the hands of another person versus, their own hands or some natural cause. She was shown the knife, and she said the wounds that she saw were consistent with this large knife. That's it. Then we had to pause while they got the Zoom set up, and they had a series of criminalists, 3 different criminalists testify, and a fourth one via he's out of town, so they previously recorded his testimony. But the first criminalist, she examined the blood of Tyler Dazey. When they took him to the hospital after he was detained, I don't know when they ever read this man his Miranda rights. That hasn't been talked about. But he was detained, but they were going to take him down for an interview and instead diverted to the hospital because they thought, he's just not right. And they wanted to get him in front of a doctor. He goes in front of the doctor. He's cleared. His vital signs are stable. He was known to the medical staff at the ER. But while he's at the ER, one of the criminal investigators gets a warrant from a judge to have his urine and his blood obtained. More about that later. But the blood was tested and for controlled substances, and it came back with THC metabolites. So he was doing pot. Now, they don't know how to quantify that because it comes in so many forms now, who knows. His urine came back with THC in it, metabolites. And then that was 2 different criminalists. And the third criminalist, this was the fingerprint analyst, and she looked at the hatchet, found a palm print on the handle that matched Tyler Dazey. Then we get another person on that was, this was the pre-recorded one. This was the DNA. No, I'm confused. Okay. I don't know what the pre-recorded one was, to be honest with you. I'm getting them all mixed up. So the next person on the stand, she actually took the stand, was the DNA analyst. And, DNA, it's so boring. But they tested a lot of different places. The bathroom drain, there were 2 contributors to the sample submitted from the bathroom drain. One came back with Tyler, the other one they couldn't figure out who it was. And he, later on, we find out he admits that he took a shower the night before and he took a shower that morning, which is why he was naked when they showed up. That's his explanation. Then they tested a jewelry box, and Jen's DNA was on the jewelry box. Why would they test it? Because there was blood in the jewelry box, I guess. The wall of the bedroom, there was blood splatter. Oh, that's what it was. Blood splatter was in the jewelry box and on the wall. And that was tested, and it did come back with Jen's blood. Okay, it's her bedroom. And then the hatchet blade, the blade of the hatchet, and we think this hatchet may have been cleaned. The hatchet blade, they couldn't get anything from it. So then we have these criminal, they call it CID, Criminal Investigation Department Division investigator. He was responsible for responding to the scene. This is the second one we've heard from now. The first one went into the home, and this one, he actually, when he got to the scene, was in charge of the perimeter. But one of the things that he did was, afterwards, he was in charge of tracking Kylie Dazey's movements. And they have cameras everywhere in the city. And once he found out where she lived, there was a camera nearby, and he went back 24 hours before the murder, and she entered her home the night before. She works at the Village Inn. Oh my God, don't you just love the Village Inn? Do you have a Village Inn where you live? Oh, great breakfast. Mm-hmm. And they bake pies. That's an aside. I wonder if she, okay, never mind. I was going to go there with the pie. So she had gone to work. She had come home. She had not left her house the entire evening. She left the next morning to go to work. There. So she was ruled out as a suspect. They didn't talk about Nick. He was interviewed. This investigator said he was interviewed by another person that we did not hear from. So then he interviewed Tyler. Now I'm thinking, okay, we're going to see the police interview. No, they don't show it. What? I've never, and the defense on cross-examination wanted to show the video and was shut down. They're like, nope, hearsay. Apparently there had been a motion in limine ahead of time to keep that out. I don't know who moved to keep it out, why. I've looked for that interview. I can't find it through Google. I don't know, but this detective does talk about statements that Tyler made during the interview, and we're going to play those for you. But before we get to this interview, this officer accompanied Tyler to the hospital, and he's the one that got the search warrant for the blood and the urine. And he told Tyler, he had this jumpsuit on that you're going to see in a little while. He told Tyler, we need a urine sample. And because he said, I have to urinate. He goes, well, we need a urine sample. Can you hold on? Because they were waiting for the warrant. And he sits down and he pees in his suit. And apparently he did that 3 different times. Yeah. He was asked if Jennifer Dazey was his mother, and he said pretentious. Nobody knows what that means. So the officer expressed his frustration. I don't know how he did that, but he expressed his frustration at not being able to get a urine sample. And Tyler's response was, "Wars are meant to be fought." So finally, he gets him to a bathroom somehow, and because he really does have to pee this time. Well, he had to pee all those times. He's peeing a lot, this guy. And the guy's trying to get the cup out, and Tyler just starts peeing. So the guy gets the cup out real quick, sticks it in the stream, and he gets some urine. Yeah. So, and he did admit that he showered the night before. I'm going to play this clip for you.
Okay, State's Exhibit 41 is admitted.
Yes. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes. I don't think you're plugged in.
Were you able to identify the person that you took the photo of?
Yes, that is a photo of Mr. Tyler Dazey.
And you positively identified him as such?
Correct.
And is he the same Tyler Dazey that is the defendant in this case before the court today?
Yes, he is.
Now, you can take that down. Did you interview Mr. Dazey at the law enforcement center?
Yes. Corporal Gorell and I interviewed him at 12:01 p.m. that afternoon in a recorded interview room in our CID offices.
Did you ask him about his sleep from the day before, the night before?
I did. That is a question that I regularly ask most people that I interview, just their normal sleep patterns. And I asked Mr. Dazey specifically how much sleep he had gotten the night before. He advised that he didn't get much sleep, upwards to maybe an hour at the most.
Did you also ask him when he last showered?
I did. I asked him about his bathing habits, and he advised that he used the shower in the main floor bathroom. He advised that he had taken one shower the evening before after he had a workout. He ballparked that to be around 8 p.m. And then he advised he had taken another shower just prior to police coming into his home that morning. And that is why he was naked.
Did you ask him if he owns a hatchet?
I did. Mr. Dazey acknowledged that he did own a hatchet. He advised me that he kept that hatchet in his toolbox within his bedroom. And he also noted that he had actually observed that hatchet that morning.
Did Mr. Dazey make any statements concerning his discipline and awareness of surroundings?
There were multiple times during the interview where he stressed how disciplined he was and how he was very aware of everything around him and what was happening.
Did you ask any questions about the layout of the house?
I did, and as soon as I asked that question, he said, "You were there." So he was obviously recognized I was in the room with him earlier that morning.
Did you ask him about his relationship with his mother?
I did. His response was, "It's fine, except for when she's acting sneaky like a witch." He then went on to talk about how his mother was part of a covenant of witches. I also asked, I followed that up with how he thought his mom thought of him. And his answer to that question was, "I think she hated me so much that she hated herself."
Did you ask when he last had a conversation with his mother?
Yes, he advised that was just before police came in and got him. And at the time she was practicing witchcraft.
Did he say where that conversation took place?
Yes, he stated that his mother was in her bed, again, noting that she was practicing witchcraft.
Did you ask about specific events that morning?
I did multiple times throughout the interview, early on when I tried to hone in on what he was doing in the minutes, the hours before police arrived. He would either say that he didn't remember or he would shift topic. Then toward the end of the interview, I again asked him what he could specifically recall happening before police got there. And he said that he was having a conversation in his head that he did not want to think about. This conversation was about trauma. He didn't want to think about it, and he would not expand on that when I asked him what that conversation was.
Did you ask him about his mom's witchcraft?
We went into that in a little more detail. He described her witchcraft as putting evil on him. He said just evil. I then asked him how he felt about his mother practicing witchcraft. And I think that is when he gets validate me. He then followed that comment up with, why would I care what a whore thinks? You sit around and drink yourself stupid, fuck like animals, and ruin your children's lives. Why would I care what a person like that thinks?
Did he say anything about, you know how witches are?
Yeah, that was in reference to, I asked him if he had ever called his mother a whore to her face. And he said, yeah, I did. I asked how his mom responded to that. And he said, she's a witch. You know how witches are. Oh, I'm better than you. I will be your fear. I will be your enemy.
Did you ask him to explain his mother's traumatic injuries?
Yes, about an hour and 18 minutes into the interview, I got to the point where I wanted him to explain the significant and severe injuries that she had. And when I asked him how she got these traumatic injuries, his response was witchcraft. I then specified that I was referring to the physical injuries to her body. He again responded witchcraft. I then asked him, I was going to need a little better understanding of how witchcraft could cause such injuries. At that time, Mr. Dazey ended the interview.
Did you leave the recorder on when you left the interview room?
Yes, the recorder stayed on until we were all done executing the search warrant on Mr. Dazey's person. So at the conclusion of the interview, that's when I told him that we had to collect evidence from him, provided him a copy of the search warrant. Correll and I then exited the room to gather up our gear for collection. After the fact, when I went back and watched the interview to type up my report, I noted that Mr. Dazey made some comments aloud while we were out of the room.
What did he say? What were the comments?
He stated, I would gladly spend an eternity in hell if she could just have a chance at heaven.
Was Mr. Dazey also alone in the squad car when you brought him to the port, when he was brought to the port down at the law enforcement center?
Yes, so Skorupski and I transported him from Mercy back down to the law enforcement center. Once we pulled into the Sally port, the two of us, I exited the squad car. In that process, I dropped my portable radio, the battery bounced off, and we were looking on the ground for my battery. Then we got him out. So he was in the squad car for over a minute before we pulled him out. After the fact, I went back and reviewed that footage from the squad car.
Did he say anything during that time he was in the squad car?
He did. Mr. Dazey made a couple comments during that time. He stated at first, they will never figure out the psychology. You have a choice, conquer me or hell it is. He then paused, stated, I love you, I'm tired, and that was the end of the comments.
Now, before Mr. Dazey was taken up to the jail floor after the interview, did he say anything spontaneously?
Yes, it was actually, he and I were just standing in the interview room together because we collected the Tyvek suit as evidence. I was waiting for Darrell to return with some clothing. We weren't talking, I wasn't questioning him, and he just stated aloud, "Witchcraft, brother, witchcraft. A lot that is wrong with my life. When people are trying to get in your way, when you are just trying to pursue happiness."
Did you tell him he was being arrested before he was taken up to the jail floor?
I did. He actually asked me if he was getting showered in, referring to going up to the jail floor. It was at that time I told him he was being arrested for the murder of his mother. His response was, "It's hard to argue witchcraft in court, isn't it?"
During all of your interactions with Mr. Dazey, did he at any time ever deny harming his mother or the dog?
Not once.
So that's that. You know, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to hear the interview. No more questions. So then on cross-examination, the defense, they tried to play the interview, and apparently there had been a motion to keep it out ahead of time. I don't know who made the motion, but it was granted. But the defense argued that the state opened the door by asking this officer all these questions about witchcraft. And under the doctrine of completeness, and the doctrine of completeness would be where, they showed part of the video, but not the whole thing. And so under the doctrine of completeness, you could argue, well, the jury should see the whole thing. Well, the judge said they didn't show the video. They didn't show any part of the video. This doesn't have anything to do with the doctrine of completeness, and it doesn't overcome hearsay. They did not open the door. It's not coming in. So I looked for this interview, and I cannot find it. I don't know. I've never seen a case where the state wanted to keep an interview out. What happened during this interview? I don't know. We'll never know. So the rest of the cross-examination, no questions. They didn't ask any questions. So the state rested their case, and the defense argued the judgment of acquittal, motion for judgment of acquittal, arguing that the state, in the light most favorable to the state, had not proven their case. And the argument they made was there's multiple counts here. First, there's lesser included offenses. So they weren't arguing the manslaughter, it could have been manslaughter, but the first and second degree murder, they were arguing they had not proved malice aforethought or premeditation. And I would agree with that, except the state argued that premeditation can be formed in an instant. And the mere fact that he swung the axe or the knife 18 times was enough time for him to think about what he was doing and give it some thought. And the judge agreed, denied the motion. Then the defense rested. Oh, they put on one witness, out of order. This is why I forgot about it. This was an officer, another detective with the Criminal Investigation Division. He was asked about, his job at the scene was to photograph the scene. And he photographed some footprints. And that was it. That was it. And he said most of those were deer prints. I have deer in my yard, and those are deer prints. That's not a footprint. But anyway, I don't know what the purpose of this was. And then they rested. That was it. They renewed their motion for judgment of acquittal, denied. So today is going to be the closing arguments. What? Now, let's talk about marijuana for a second. Pot. In my experience, marijuana makes you mellow. It doesn't cause you to have violent behavior. But I guess it could affect different people in different ways. I don't know. And that could have been in his system for days. We don't know when he did it, or, I don't know. So my question is this guy all there? He was evaluated and he was deemed competent to stand trial. Now, obviously, he chose not to participate in the trial, but did he understand the consequences of his actions when he did them? I don't know. They didn't plead insanity, so we will never find that out, will we? But my sense is that something's off with him, and he stopped taking his medication or something. Anyway, just my opinion. All right, so stay tuned for the verdict today after the closing arguments, and I'll get that to you as soon as I can. The jury doesn't have a lot to go on here, so I cannot predict what's going to happen. So have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye.